Hello, hello. Welcome back to Lotus Chat Worldwide. I am here together with Jen. Say hi.
Hi, everyone.
Hello, everyone. I'm so glad to be back. And this week we are on episode 72, and we decided to talk about dealing with stress. So we've got, especially Jen, we've got some friends that, keep asking us about this topic. So jump on in, Jen. Let us know, what do you think is stress?
So I'm glad we're discussing this because it is something that I myself have found myself come across many, many times in my life. And I'm glad that this episode will hopefully add a little bit of clarity for all of us out there in regards to how do we define stress? And according to the dictionary definition, stress is a state of mental or emotional strain or tension resulting from adverse or very demanding circumstances. So that is the dictionary definition. And when it mentions the word tension, that is the first word that I think of when I think of stress. It does cause quite a bit of tension in our mental space, in our bodies. If at least for me, I know when I'm under stress, when I feel like the shoulders tensing up and you feel like the muscles kind of getting kind of tight, especially the neck area and the
Yeah.
shoulders. And stress definitely does affect you physically. And I feel that if you can come into awareness of how you define stress and how that is affecting you on a physical, emotional, and mental level, that is the first step in getting it into a place where you can regulate it and you can have control over your mind a bit better, which will then the result will be affecting your body in a positive way. So ZeAnn, what do you think stress is?
For me, stress is something um I want to talk about external and internal stress. For me, when stress happens to me, sometimes it comes from external. So where, people say something that I'm not exactly agreeing on, or something happened to my life, some external circumstance. And like the tension on the shoulders, I think for me, it's agitation. There's a lot of agitation. My impatience will come out, will flare into a next level. I think occasionally, I have to admit, even anger comes into that mixture of emotional cocktail. And then I think all that is mashed together when there is internal stress needing to deal with that external stress. Does that make sense? Like when that stress happens, it's actually external, but then internally, I need to deal with it. I need to deal with the stress. And of course, there are things that, just let it, fly by or let it flow. Those are more like trivial circumstances, doesn't affect me. So of course, it's easy to let it fly by, but then there are definitely moments in my life, at least, and I'm sure in many others' life as well, that when stress happens, sometimes it's something that it really affects you and you don't know what to do with it. So internally, you are dealing with the stress after that situation has passed. And it could be days, weeks, depending. Yeah.
Oh, Deanna, I'm glad that you discussed the different types of stress, the external, the internal, the way that stress can affect you over time.
Yes.
And it really comes to like what many people also define as the three types of stress, which are acute, episodic, and chronic.
Mm,
So when you define acute stress and like for example, chronic stress, are those stressors that are constant, that your
mm,
body just responds to all the time. It's a stressor that is always there, that
mm.
always causes that inner trigger in you. Like you said, that a trigger of
The trigger.
agitation,
That's so
trigger
true.
yeah, the trigger of anger. I
Yeah.
agree with the, trigger of even lack of comfort, where you almost feel
Mm,
uncomfortable being in that
mm.
stressor is
Yes.
something that I know once you define the types of stress that you're on, whether it's something that's constant or whether it's something that is only like when that trigger happens, meaning it's an episodic type of stressor. So
Mm.
let's say somebody says something and it's like, oop, there's a trigger there and it stresses you out. You're like, okay, but then that thing doesn't linger with you on a daily basis because that's a chronic stressor. That would be
Yeah.
something always there.
Yeah.
So that gets us nicely into the next question, which is why is stress unhealthy? And you and I described some very like bodily, emotional reactions to stress. ZeAnn, why is stress unhealthy for us?
Well, I guess it depends on how you kind of let it spiral on, because if we can manage the stress well, it stops. Then it's fine. But when it spirals on into, for me, it goes into overthinking, because I repeat the exact scene that happened, last week, and then I'm like, why did he say that? Or like, why would someone even, you know like think of such sentence, or so I realize it's unhealthy because sometimes it affects my sleep. So my sleep quality is affected, and it's getting better nowadays, definitely. But I think when it affects my sleep, that's when I know that something is really bothering my mind. But I think more importantly, then I like to ask myself deep questions. I don't know why, but it's just my nature. But sometimes I guess I also ask myself, it's just a clash of worldview, like it's just different perspective, it's just something that I hear does not agree with what I have in my mind, which makes me wonder, is stress related because I'm not open-minded enough to consider the other perspective? Stress happens. Is it because that I have a close-minded, or rather a certain worldview, that I want to only hear everything that fits into that little box in my mind, and when that doesn't fit, I'll be like, that's absurd. you know? Yeah, so that's why I think stress is unhealthy. What about you?
Well, you ended it with the fitting into a little in that box, right? Okay, so we of course, and we've discussed this in other Lotus Chat episodes. If you've not had a chance to see them, go view them, where we discuss how we are conditioned, how our bodies, our minds are conditioned as we grow, when we're born and go through life, and the mindsets that we come into, the perspectives, the viewpoints. And I do feel many of us get into that stressful state when something does differ than to what we are normally comfortable or conditioned to. Like, for example, I know for myself, I get stressed out when I'm put into a situation that has a lot of unknown possibility. So I will say, like, for example, if somebody said, oh, let's go to XYZ, and I'm like, well, I've
Yeah.
never been there. And then I start thinking about like, okay, I may start stressing about, well, what do I bring? What do I
Yeah.
wear? And I go through all these worries, and I can like maybe the night before not sleep as well, because I'm like, well, I have to think of this and I have to think of that, and I need to make sure I'm prepared in case this happens. I go through that mindset. And yes,
It's
for all of you
it's
out there who do that, going through that mindset can be a bit unhealthy, especially if it affects your sleep, as I mentioned. And another thing about stress that I've learned is that it definitely affects our cortisol levels. And if you guys aren't familiar with cortisol, that's that part in our body that actually regulates like weight, appetite, our metabolism, blood pressure, and even our sugar levels. And I learned about this because I have family members in my life who are affected by, sugar type of situations like
Mhm.
diabetes. And I have noticed that in the periods and times when my family member is under a lot of stress, that the sugar level does go up. And it's not has nothing to do with what they ate the night before. It has nothing to do with, lack of XYZ, but it is because they were under a period of stress. And so that did elevate their sugar. And the doctors have said the same thing. So at this point, our cortisol levels are very important. And for some of you out there who are like, I'm not under stress, like I don't even have like weight issues, or I don't have XYZ issues. There are even studies that say how stress can actually affect you in a way where you actually become more fatigued. So if you're under
Mhm.
chronic stress for a long period of time, the studies say you can actually become very fatigued. You might actually go into states where you might get a little bit depressed. You might even go into states where you don't eat as much. So there's like the two like very
Mm.
different like studies of how stress can affect the body.
That's
And
true.
yeah, and so I think that awareness of scientifically how stress is something that we should all learn to regulate if we do want to be healthy.
Mhm.
Super important. Even whether you're young or old. I know, like I said, for me, what I've noticed is when I'm under a lot of stress, I do one of two things. I go towards sweets, and
Sweet.
for all of you out there who go towards the ice cream or the cookies or the powdered donuts, that is what I do when I get stressed out. I go towards the sweets because it feels good. And that is another thing that I've learned in study that people can do is they go towards cravings. They start craving certain foods and they want to eat more of those foods when they're under stress. And so I know that I have to really learn how to regulate that so that I'm not always going towards the sweets. But that is just for me. ZeAnn, is there something that you go towards when you are stressed, like things that you've noticed that you do when you're under stress?
Well, when you talk about food, there is one food that I always go to, and that's a very lately hobby, I would say, which I tend to eat kwachi. It's such a traditional like food actually, or snack, in within, at least not in my family, but like I see people who eats usually are more seniors and all, but I don't know why I picked that up, and it's like it's a way for me to kind of stop myself from over talking, or or stop myself from being impatient as a result of stressing on certain events. And I noticed that I do that a lot when I'm waiting for my kids. So sometimes when I'm waiting for them, I get really impatient, and then they start to fight and blah blah blah, and I get really impatient. But I don't. But I love my weekends, and I don't want to go through the whole like being a naggy mom, or trying to get things to be perfect. They have their own style, so I end up just watching whatever they're doing. It could be fighting, it could be eating happily, just watching like the world go by. The world goes by, and just eating kwashi. It's actually really therapeutic.
See, and you talk about the therapeutic quality of our comfort food. Yes. Now,
Yeah.
for all there who are like, well, this helps me get through a stressful moment or a stressful period.
Yes.
You can definitely go towards those things that give you comfort, whether it's a blanket or an action that you do that helps you get back to a state where you're not so stressed out. Maybe sit in front of the TV and like eat some comfort food in moderation, of course, for all of you
Yeah.
out there. Keyword, you can definitely do these things in moderation, which is very important that we all realize that. I'm not taking anybody's de-stressor away, but I am. Let us remember to stay healthy. And that takes us to the next question here about how do we know that we are under stress? We've already discussed some key elements of our behavior, our emotions, and even our eating habits. How else do we know we're under stress, ZeAnn?
For me, I just flipped out, seriously, when I know that, usually when something happens, I go like, what? This is so ridiculous. I just flip out, occasional, bursts of anger, to be honest. And sometimes, like I said just now, the impatience come in, but I realize that for me, when I have an external event that happened, or something that someone said that really gives me a lot of stress, I tend to want to kind of verbal diarrhea out, like I need to talk to someone about it. I was like, I just need to like let it out. It cannot be in my chest. It has to be out. So usually I turn to, my closest friends or my closest family member, that I trust and who understands the context, and then letting it out. But after I'm done with that process, I realize that I need time to quiet down. So my me time is very important. My drawing time is very important, because that's actually a very therapeutic way of releasing stress too. And even down to my exercise, like going swimming, and just not talk about it, getting the dopamine hormones to overcome the cortisol, if that makes sense.
Yeah, 100%. Let's up that dopamine, guy. Get that cortisol level back.
Yeah.
Yes, I agree 100% with a lot of what you said about how you regulate stress, especially like, the drawings part or the journaling. For all of you out there who, vent in your journal, like you talk about all the things stressing you out in your journal. That's something I do. I also, okay. So I know that some people may say it's unhealthy to do this, but I feel strongly in people taking time for themselves, just by taking the space. So if you don't want to answer calls, if you just want to kind of love yourself, take some time out and, go in your room and like, cuddle up with a blanket, watch a movie that will bring your mind back to the dopamine level of happy movie, listen to some music that really brings up your energy to stop thinking about whatever stressor it is. Venting, as ZeAnn said, to somebody close to you. I'm a very big believer in taking time out for yourself, even if it is just you on yourself for like an hour or two. And if there's something else where you don't feel you don't want to be in that space you're in because that space itself is a stressor, get yourself out of the house. Get in the car, go for a drive, go to the park, go maybe to a favorite place of yours, like a museum, a garden, whatnot, that will help kind of bring your cortisol levels back to a balanced state and make you feel happy about the moment. So you won't have to think about the stressor. So ZeAnn, you mentioned something before we started this episode, because right now we've talked a lot about the downsides and the things that stress can do and how it affects the body and the mind and the emotional state. You mentioned positive stress. Can you kind of explain what positive stress is? I'm very
Yes. I do think that stress is kind of like a balance, like and there is a negative stress, which we talk about, and there's also positive stress. And I think if we manage the stress really well, we can kind of move that cursor up to having it as a positive stress in a way, turning whatever challenges or situation into something positive so that it drives us to either to work harder or to, I don't know, earn more money or be more efficient, or, so it's like a positive stress. And I say this because I've got, I coach a lot of clients who deal with a lot of procrastination. So I introduced that idea to them because in order for you to overcome procrastination, you need to have a certain level of stress, kind of like a big reason to kick your ass, and just move on, So that's what I meant by positive stress, because if everything is comfortable, everything is going well, there's no reason to change and there's no reason to move. So that's why when you have a slight positive stress, it becomes like almost like a drive, a drive to do something.
Ooh, okay. For everyone out there, if you agree with what ZeAnn just said in terms of changing that mindset, please, let us know in the comments, because I think for me, I love the way she explained that. And I totally understand when stress can actually be the turning point in somebody's life to want to make a change. So in that sense, stress becomes the positive trigger towards a new beginning for you, or a new way of being that's actually much healthier. And like, I'm going to bring up, for example, my stressor, which was, okay. So there's something I've been working on, which is the overthinking stressor, where you overthink things to a point where you, like I said in the beginning, you start thinking about, well, what if this happens? What if that? And that is I'm going to say that was causing a chronic stress pattern where every day I was at a point when I was younger where I was stressing about something. Whether it was like a relationship or some type of thing that I was working on, a family thing, I was definitely feeling like I needed to get out of my head.
Yes.
And to a lot of the things that I put into practice through the different courses that I've gone through with self-improvement, with everybody in the Lotus Chat ladies and the people I've met along the way, I've realized that I needed to, one, come to a state of awareness that I was in a stressor type of state that was causing a lot of health issues for me. And two, like ZeAnn said, realizing that, hey, maybe these stressors, I shouldn't be like, oh, okay, it's going to go away. It's not going to be, it's going to go away. No, it kept coming back. It kept coming back because it was like, we need to keep giving you examples of your stress so that you can finally decide to change and get out of the stress. And that's what I feel what happened is I think I was put into these constant cycles of this trigger so that I could finally say, hey, I'm going to change it. I'm going to change my mindset. I'm going to change the way I think. I'm going to get out of this stressor, and I'm going to start stopping the overthinking and realizing that, hey, things happen. There's nothing I can do about it. I can't control a situation. I can't control people. I just need to realize Jen, just keep going. Like Dory, I keep thinking Dory, just swimming, guys, like just keep swimming.
Yeah.
And that is what I feel all in all for me is where I can see where ZeAnn means that a stressor can be the trigger to changing an unhealthy life pattern.
And I like what you shared, Jen, because I definitely resonate with the whole, overthinking and getting stressed when I'm being presented in a situation when there's not a lot of details. Like, and so too much uncertainty. So actually, one of the kind of like things that I want to work on myself this year is to have the freedom. Actually, I thought about that word because I realized when I'm in those situations, I'm not free because I'm stressed about what's going on and what's about to go on and what could or could not happen. There's so many thoughts in my mind, and then I feel that I'm not free. I'm always constantly like in a box. So one of the keywords I put on my own dream board is the word freedom, to be able to do whatever I want, whenever I want, and however I want. And that concept of freedom not only applies to just, financial means, so that I'm able to do whatever I want. But beyond that is, I think, the freedom of the mind, like being able to be free and put myself deliberately in a situation. And for me, my examples that I intend to practice this year is going for impromptu trips without much planning, which is not something that I can get used to. I can see you shaking your head. Yeah, it's not something that's easy for me, but that's what I intend to do, to deliberately put myself in there so that I'm open to experiences and kind of enjoy the idea of being totally free from my own expectations or, whatever
Oh,
that's in my mind.
Jen, you said something that so many people have told me I need to do. Jen, you gotta let go, Jen. You gotta surrender to the experience. There's no need to plan. If something happens, you can buy something wherever you're going. If you need something, there's
Yeah.
gonna be a store around the corner. And I'm thinking to myself, but what if there's no store? What if there's like, oh, ZeAnn, I'm so glad that you said that because that is very inspiring for me to
Yeah.
get back into that mindset of being open to being so free where I am not worried about what's going to happen 5 minutes, 10 minutes, or an hour from now.
Yeah.
I'm in the moment. And if you have not, everyone out there, what is coming to mind are the books by Eckhart Tolle, who
You told me about that.
he speaks so much about being in the moment and what that means and looks like, not just for us as an individual, but us in relationship to other people. And for me, it is something that I know, like I said, with the idea of letting go of control. I'm really working on it, and I feel I'm starting to get at a good place with me in regards to external things with people. But I do feel like for me, and that being free, like truly free, as ZeAnn said, is a work in progress. And I know I'll get there. I keep putting myself out there. Like, for example, I was going to try something new recently, guys, out there is I was going to try to start kind of getting myself into groups that have common interests and common hobbies and just meeting people that I don't know at all and seeing what happens because who knows, there might be new friends in there. There might be people who might be able to take me out to see even more of what I'm interested in. And I'm ready to put myself out there because I feel it's time that I just take the leap and take a risk.
Oh, I like
So
that.
I'm gonna start doing that. And if anyone out there is interested in, the different groups or the different websites where you can do that, let me know. And I'd be happy to send you that information.
Yeah.
Something I'm gonna start doing and moving into like, how do we regulate stress? Because now we've discussed all the different types of stress, how we ourselves personally deal with the stressors that we deal with or what they are, but how can we give to everyone out the advice on how to regulate it when they feel it?
Okay, so one of the ways that I am practicing myself is that whenever I am in a situation where it's uncertain, right? I used to say in my head like, "Oh shit," not verbally, but in my head, it's like, But now everything that I know, or I could smell the uncertainty coming along, I go like in my head, I go like, that is interesting. So that alone, I realize it helps me to kind of, be open to what's gonna happen. Yeah.
Oh, okay. That perfect. I'm glad that you are becoming more, like you said, open, right? And
Yeah.
you're allowing yourself to be, I'm going to say open to the possibilities of the
Yeah.
unknown.
I love that.
So for all of us out there who have a quote unquote fear of the unknown, we also discuss fear stuff in other episodes, like about like dealing through fears and worries and doubts in other episodes if you want to check those out. But like, yes, if you ever felt stressed, personally, what I do is I meditate. That is a huge like practice of getting myself into a state of balance mentally and physically, because I notice that when I either meditate or pray, prayer is another thing that I do, I'm able to get my breathing into more of a state of relaxation. I can feel my heart rate going from that agitated state that ZeAnn mentioned into more of a calm heartbeat. I can sense that the different voices in the head that are like, well, what about this? And what about that? I can sense when they are quieting down, because I let the meditative music kind of be, I tell myself, listen to the music, listen to the music. That's it. I keep just no, like be at peace, listen to the music. And I say these three things. I say, you are safe, you are loved, and you are protected.
Oh.
So I say those three things anytime I'm stressed, because I know for a fact that I am protected and I am safe in that moment, and that I have people around me to support and love me, regardless of how stressed out I am. And I return to that reminder. So keep reminding yourself through meditation or prayer that you have people there to support you. And that's a big one for me. The other thing I do is I do like muscle relaxation techniques, where I go through like different parts of my body and I say, okay, we're going to go through the head, we're going to go through the neck. And I tell myself, okay, we're going to relax the shoulders, we're going to relax the mind. And we go through piece by piece by piece until I reach my toes. And by the end of that whole like relaxation muscle technique, ooh, I'm so relaxed. And if you don't like meditation, there's some people out there who's like, I can't meditate. It's too much going on in the head. Relaxing baths or showers. Get yourself some eucalyptus oil or eucalyptus candle, put it in the shower while you're taking a bath or a shower. That eucalyptus smell is so relaxing personally for me. If you have a particular scent that you love, add that to your self-care routine and you will see how much that does help you de-stress at the end of the day.
That's beautiful.
So, ZeAnn, are there any last words that you have for our viewers today in relation to the subject about stress?
I suppose since we have a common thing about, getting stressed when we are in an uncertainty. So I don't know, like, would you be up for like a little commitment for Lotus Chat ladies to do like a impromptu trip on our own, not together, or we can do it together. I don't know, impromptu trip this year and see what happens.
You know, if we are individually challenging each other to get ourselves out there in a trip where it's not planned,
why not? Yeah.
I am gonna make that happen this year. So ZeAnn, we can report out to our Lotus Chat.
And then we can do an episode about it.
Yes.
Uncertainty.
Ooh, yes. So anyone out there who wants to join with us on doing impromptu trips that are not planned, where you just go in and are just allow the time to take you wherever it takes you, let us know how that goes for you. We would love to hear your experience. And I'm so glad we could do this episode for you today on dealing with stress, episode 72. And ZeAnn, thank you so much for being here on this special episode. And we'll come back again for our next episode with another wonderful topic that we're going to discuss with you all. Please don't forget to like, share, or subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, if something resonated with you today. And we also can be found on Spotify. We have a Spotify podcast if you guys haven't heard. check out the old episodes. There might be something there that really does hit home for something you're going through right now. So thank you all for joining us today, and we will see you next time. Take care, guys.
Bye.